movements. So we cannot go anywhere.
Karen Bass speaking right now outside the Don Lemon hearing. Maybe we'll hear from Don, but I seem to remember her entire city burning down while she vacationed in Africa. Let's tune in.
Being snatched off our street, and now all of you are at risk. And this is just unacceptable. This assault on our democracy has got to end. And you, all journalists, play such a critical role. And I just want you to know, and I think I could speak on behalf of this crowd, we are all going to fight every day for your ability to tell the truth, for your ability to cover this story and any other story. We have to draw the line in the sand and say we will not allow for the dismantling of our democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to cover this story. I am definitely spiking the football on this one. Don Lemon has been arrested, if you didn't know already. The perpetually aggrieved former CNN anchor who spent years lecturing America from his ivory tower, hating white people while being married to a white dude, by the way, lecturing you and I about truth and accountability and, no one's above the law.
I believe in integrity. I believe in the separation of church and state. And I believe that the rules should be the same for all. No one should be above the law.
Yeah, well, just had federal agents slap him in cuffs in Beverly Hills right in the middle of schmoozing at the Grammys that nobody watches anymore. The best part is that the warrant was issued by a grand jury of residents in Minnesota. So there's no way to, say that there wasn't a fair process here. He got indicted by Minnesota. And probably will... This is the equally hilarious part, is the same people on the same network who fired him, the ones who were happy to not even wave goodbye to him on his way out the door, now are suddenly his best friends again, making this a right-left thing. Brian Stelter, the fired, then rehired, giving an opinion that absolutely nobody asked for.
The pressure from the right to take this action was really, really severe. And you're going to see some people, on the MAGA right who are going to cheer this.
Yes! As a matter of fact, I am going to cheer this. I will use this as an opportunity to celebrate because that guy hated and criticized everything I stand for. And he thought he could just do whatever he wanted under the banner of journalisming. Wrong. And I'm laughing at this because these were the people that tried to destroy me personally when I was in the Trump administration. So bottle those tears, Brian. I want to keep them to remember this moment. And Harmeet Dillon, she's apparently the only person at the DOJ actually doing stuff right now, told us on this show that this was coming.
I have seen enough video and evidence at this point to believe that what we saw and what we're seeing on the screen there is multiple violations of, at a minimum, the FACE Act, as well as other federal statutes. And so we want to bring as strong a case as we can against as many of the offenders as we can. The First Amendment does not protect journalists when they're committing crimes themselves. Okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Yep. This is great. Now, if we could start locking up the J6 committee, that would also keep the ball rolling. But this is not at all partisan. Don Lemon said exactly what he was doing before he did it. This is premeditated.
They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up. And it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, I can't tell you where they're going.
Dude, you went into a church and then you were asked to leave by the pastor, and instead you argued with him and then lectured him on the rights that you clearly know nothing about.
So this is what the First Amendment is about the freedom to protest?
No. I mean, by that logic, the J6 people who went into the people's house, ironically enough, should have been protected. But no, Don Lemon, you insisted they be arrested. But Don Lemon went into private property. He was asked to leave, and he wants to be protected. Got it. Don, under your logic, well, I mean, let's just spitball here. Let's say there's some group out there that disagreed with homosexuality. Could they bust into your living room, start chanting and screaming in your face while you're trying to have dinner with your husband? I mean, by your logic, the First Amendment overrules private property and the right to worship, so bursting into your living room to scream at your husband over dinner should be fine by that, right? No, look, Of course, that's not how the First Amendment works. I know that, and that's why I'm not being arrested, and Don Lemon is. But other fired CNN hosts came to his rescue.
It should piss off every American, and it will piss off, I mean, every good, patriotic American. Non-crazy MAGA Americans will be pissed off about this. In MAGA world, they will whip this up into a frenzy and say, aha, see? But that's because they are a part of a fascist movement.
There it is. There it is. Fascist movement. Jim Acosta is big mad trying to make this fascist from the same people who supported Nina Jankowicz's Ministry of Truth. It would be not a party unless you had other liberal media regulars cry racism. Perhaps the dumbest take of the day.
It is an expression of white supremacy because there was something in the original Constitution that would have allowed them to arrest a black journalist like Don Lemon. And that was called the Fugitive Slave Clause in Article 4 of the original Constitution, which allowed the government to reclaim escaped property.
Is he serious? He thinks it's racism because the DOJ charged a black man for breaking the law? I mean, who wants to tell him that he actually was charged under the FACE and KKK Act, if you can believe it, for a crime committed on MLK weekend? But the sensationalism and TMZ, this is great. Don Lemon has been arrested. Could this change democracy forever? No. But this is where the libs draw the line. Not when Donald Trump was shot in the ear, not when the second attempt was made, not when Charlie Kirk was shot in front of the entire world, not when they impeached Trump over a phone call or made one misdemeanor that was way past the statute of limitation that turned into 34 felonies, charged him and convicted him, the former and soon-to-be sitting president, by a hand-selected jury. No, that wasn't changing democracy, TMZ. Not when Barack Obama, the political opponent of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, funneled known fake information called the Russian dossier into the highest levels of law enforcement to say that Trump was a Russian asset. That didn't change democracy forever? Or when 51 former intel officials told us that Hunter Biden's laptop wasn't real, the laptop that was dropped off by Hunter Biden with a receipt signed by Hunter Biden with Hunter Biden's email and phone number on it, with pictures of Hunter Biden doing crack with hookers in bathtubs, driving 174 miles per hour. Now, 51 former intel officials told us not to believe that. That didn't change our democracy? Or when they forced you to get vaccinated? No, that wasn't. Oh, that's literally fascism. Apparently the line for TMZ, like some lowlife, has this journalist they're calling Don Lemon, who just wanted his 5 minutes of fame and was shocked when he messed around and found out, that's where those losers draw the line. Don Lemon getting arrested for a premeditated invasion of a church on a Sunday. Arresting him for that is an attack on democracy? Okay. Why aren't these people just as outraged when, I don't know, pick another thing. Obama spied on the AP and our own Newsmax James Rosen. Cops stood by while Andy Ngo got his butt kicked by protesters in the street while being a journalist. When the mob went after Cam Higbie, Nick Sorter, Nick Shirley, when 8 of the people charged on J6 were more of a journalist than Don Lemon ever was or will be. John Sullivan, Tim Guinat, Sean Witzman, Steve Baker, Steve Horn, who we're going to have on in just a minute about this. Some of them didn't even go into the Capitol, but they were covering it and they were arrested. No one ever even asked them to leave, like they did to Don Lemon, but they had their lives ruined while Don Lemon cheered about it and talked about accountability. Where were these same people when Tom Homan had to send his family into hiding because of the mob, or when Sarah Huckabee was kicked out of a restaurant for literally speaking on behalf of the president? Is that not free speech? Don Lemon is a hack. CNN fired Don Lemon for a litany of things, including his tanking ratings and saying that Nikki Haley was not in her prime, too. But I'll leave you with what Kamala Harris told us.
On that day, we saw violence, chaos, and lawlessness. But some so-called leaders still tried to mislead and gaslight by claiming it was a peaceful protest. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I could imagine. Kind of like when they broke into that church. If karma had a face, it would be grinning ear to ear while scrolling through the lib meltdowns on social media. Senior columnist for Town Hall, Kurt Schlichter, and independent journalist Steve Horn. Steve, you know, you were just peacefully minding your own business, taking video and documenting things, and you went to jail for less. Steve, I don't think we have you there. Well, Kurt.
You're still silencing him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
I've been unsilenced.
Steve,
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I didn't end up going to jail. I got 12 months of probation. But yeah, they definitely argued that they could prosecute whatever journalists they wanted. And the only reason why they didn't prosecute the mainstream media journalists was because I guess they didn't want to. And so, you know, we can see the shoes on the other foot. Now, you know, these journalists who have previously, you know, received this protection of prosecutorial discretion are now finding that, you know, their antics aren't looked on as kindly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kurt, it just seems that this is so easy to debunk anything. Like we just had Karen Bass, who can't rebuild her city, talking about Don Lemon.
Well, in Karen Bass's defense, she's a clinical moron. Well, I guess that's not a very good defense, is it?
From the lawyer.
Look, I told these people, I've been telling these people for years, I've been writing books about how you don't want to change the rules. You don't want to do that because there's only one set of rules, and it's going to become a prickly pear suppository for you. And lo and behold, it's happened. You know, at one time, we kind of would have bent backwards for reporters and everything. But then guys like Steve went to jail for just showing up and documenting what was happening. So now Don Lemon, though he did more than just document what happened, he's going to jail too. And I couldn't be happier. Now, I didn't want these rules. I think they're a bad idea. And I think we should go back to the old rules, but not until they pay.
Right.
Because they have to learn that there's pain at the end of the road they've chosen.
Well, yeah, Stephen, that's the same thing. It's like I wasn't there on January 6th. I didn't go to jail, but I got criticized at every corner for supporting you guys and saying they didn't do anything wrong. I want my pound of flesh, too.
Yeah, I mean, I like to take the high road when I can.
Not
I
me.
like to, you know, give some,
Hey, the high
some
road
grace
is retribution, Steve.
On principle. But yeah, I mean, in this case, the facts of the facts of the government is alleging, if they're true, it's definitely crossing the line. I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah, I would just like to point out the hilarity of this. Steve, we love you, man, but you're the guy who actually got charged with this stuff for journalisming, and we're the guys who are like, yeah, let's go get him. It's just what's up, Kurt?
You know, Carl, look, I didn't sign up for a conservatism that was done with retribution. Okay, retribution is a key part of what we do. If you do something bad, you suffer for it. I'm all in on that. And if you want to be one of these spineless Tom Tillis femboys who wants to roll over like the pretty new guy on the cell block,
right?
Count me out.
Yeah.
Because I don't do submission.
Well, Stephen, the other thing, too, is CNN. Okay, they're the ones who cheered on people like you getting probation and your friends going to jail and stuff like this. They sent out a statement defending Don Lemon, said the FBI's arrest of our former CNN colleague, Don Lemon, who they fired, raises profoundly concerning questions about press freedom and First Amendment, where a chief judge of the Minnesota Federal District Court, there was no evidence that there was any criminal behavior involved in their work. Look, I mean, I guess they're going to take that stance now that they like him again?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the age where anyone can pick up, you know, the camera or the meta glasses like Don Lemon has and film. You know, I don't think there's really any basis in the First Amendment to say that your prior employment with, you know, a major corporation like CNN grants you some higher level of protection under the First Amendment than someone like me at January 6th. You know, I had only been doing it for a couple months. I didn't have a huge audience. I didn't have, you know, connections in the industry. I didn't have anyone to come out and stand up for me until I raised a stink about it over the next couple of years, where it made it into the minds of some people like yourself as an example of like, hey, they did go after journalists.
Yeah.
And so for CNN to come out now, it's not surprising they're circling their wagons. They realize that the protection that Don Lemon no longer has is also a protection that they no longer have. Because it's not the freedom of the media corporation, it's the freedom of the press.
Correct. Real quick, Kathy Griffin, this was the woman who held up the fake Trump severed head. She's going crazy with her leftist lunatics friends. Roll this.
It's time to talk to your neighbors, find out if they're MAGA or not. Sorry, but we have to know who's on our team and start to plan.
I mean, they could just look at the giant Trump flag on my front lawn on the flagpole, but put me on that list. I've been waiting for this.
Well, look, let me ask you. I mean, you're a Navy SEAL. That's kind of like being in the military.
Sort of.
Which side do you want to be on? The side with Kathy Griffin and her makeup, or the side with the Navy SEALs and the Army colonels and a whole bunch of other guys who have absolutely no intention of living on our knees in submission to this kind of wretched SSRI gobbling wine woman? Choose wisely.
Yeah. Well said. And you're a lawyer, so it's basically official. All right. Kurt Schlichter, Stephen Horn, we appreciate it. All right, coming up, $19 million to a homeless lesbian to make physical training outfits for the military despite zero resources to do the job. Just another day in the swamp, I guess, but that's the tip of the iceberg. We're going to have the reporter who's uncovering all that. But first, the government, hours away from a shutdown and now trying to work out some weird deal that nobody asked for. Time's running out. They don't see it coming, though, I guess. Senator Ron Johnson joins us next.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
Whether it's care before or after school, or a sitter for date night, you don't have to hire just anyone. You can find a background-checked caregiver who's the right fit for you. Join now and find care at care.com.
A lot of people don't know their investment portfolios are quietly funding radical left-wing agendas. Is yours? To find out, download the free Monorail Investment Analyzer app. It reveals exactly what your dollars are backing in seconds, so you can align your investments to match your values and grow your money with confidence. Plus, see if you qualify for a $1,000 trading bonus. Visit monorail.com to download the free app and get your free portfolio analysis now.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now at Ancestry.
I still love to surf, snowboard, and of course skate, so I take Cunol Magnesium to support my muscle and bone health. Cunol's high-absorption magnesium glycinate helps me get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Well, government funding runs out at midnight, so it appears that over the weekend, obviously, the government will temporarily shut down. I don't know how many people will realize that. Even though there's a deal to fund most of this stuff through September, except for DHS, the Senate is expected to pass this package, but send it back to the House, which is currently in recess until Monday. But once it returns to the House, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, saying what we all wanted her to say, says no legislation will head back to the Senate without the SAVE Act attached to it. Voter responsibility, ID, things like that. Why can't Republicans get this done, though? Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, sir, a lot of questions here. You guys are finally doing this. But why would you separate DHS funding? Because you know the Democrats are just going to fight it now that the government's open.
Well, I wouldn't have done it, but that's a call made by the White House and leadership. I've been saying for months, I've been asking our leadership in terms of the strategy of how they've been putting these appropriation bills together. How are we going to fund DHS? How are we going to pass the Shutdown Fairness Act? We should be passing is the Eliminate Shutdowns Act so we can get rid of this brinkmanship for all time, but that hasn't happened. So again, we're witnessing the continuation of this dysfunction around the appropriation process. I've been here 15 years. We should have passed 180 appropriation bills on time. In other words, before the start of the fiscal year that they're funding, we've passed 6 on time. That's a 96.7% failure rate. Time for a paradigm shift, but the uniparty appropriators apparently like the shutdown threats to pass bills that we can't afford. And quite honestly, include earmarks. This year's appropriation process will have about $14 billion worth of earmarks. I'm part of the Republican conference. We have a resolution in our conference against earmarks, and yet we chair the committee, and we're allowing something like $14 billion for earmarks. It's pretty disgusting.
Well, for folks that don't know, earmarks basically allows people to just put stuff in there after it's already passed approval and all these things. Once it goes to the floor for a vote, it is wild to me that that's even a thing. But also, sir, the other thing that really worries me is that this, we continuously have this battle over and over again. There's no consequences for your colleagues who might vote against this on the left or, in whatever thing. Why didn't you guys just say, hey, you know what? This is our bill. If you don't like it, we're going to nuke the filibuster and pass it anyway. Have a nice day. See you on Monday.
Well, I've actually supported President Trump's call for ending the filibuster. Reluctantly, the filibuster has prevented us from being a socialist nation for decades because it's stopped a lot of really bad socialist type of legislation. But the Democrats have shown us their hand. They've purged the 2 senators that prevented them from ending the filibuster when they had control. We know when Democrats get control, they'll nuke the filibuster, pack the Supreme Court, and get a couple, 4 more senators by making D.C. and Puerto Rico states. So we're going to be schmucks if we sit back and let them do that. If we end the filibuster, we're going to do it for hopefully something like the Secure America Act, where we secure our elections, secure our border, secure taxpayer funds, prevent some of this fraud, or try and eliminate as much as we can. These things be highly popular. Democrats don't want to do these things. Again, Democrats want to make it easy to cheat in our elections. They want an open border. So these things American people support, that would be a bill worthy of ending the filibuster to get passed and signed into law.
Sir, and I got about a minute left. I realize that you're for this, but there are some Republicans who are still on the fence about the SAVE Act. Why is this even remotely an issue for Republicans?
I think the argument is we do want states to run their own elections. The problem is there have to be some standards to make sure that legitimate votes in one state aren't canceled out by illegitimate votes in a state that have no control over the election. So things like make sure that only U.S. citizens vote. That's the primary part of the SAVE Act. Again, Democrats want to make it easy to cheat. That's because they want to cheat. They probably do cheat. We want to make it easy to vote, but almost impossible to cheat. I think that's where the American people are as well.
Yeah, I mean, like when Georgia tightened up their elections and used voter ID, they had more people come to the polls. So there's no data to support the other side on this. Senator, we appreciate it very much, sir.
Have a good evening.
All right. Coming up, Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson announcing her guidelines on how to hinder ICE activities with city resources. Remind me again why these places are still getting any federal funding whatsoever. We got that and more in our Culture Clash coming up.
If you don't change that, I'm going to Mrs. Reagan and I'm resigning.
The Reagans, the Bushes, and the Clintons. White House usher Chris Emery saw it all. Discover the secret lives of the first families. Watch White House Usher, the inside story.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Youth mental health is a complex challenge that requires comprehensive solutions. We must strengthen after-school programs. We must make digital literacy tools available in our schools. We must work with mental health professionals to support children. And we must empower mentors, educators, and parents to keep kids happy. Learn more about our commitment to finding lasting solutions at empowerourfuturecoalition.com/solutions. Paid for by the Coalition to Empower Our Future.
Precise designs, subtle curves, curated upgrades, elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna...
Microphones after being released from jail, and let's listen to what he has to say.
It truly means the world to me. I had no idea what's going on because obviously I haven't seen anything. I have spent my entire career covering the news. I will not stop now. In fact, there is no more important time than right now, this very moment, for a free and independent media that shines a light on the truth and holds those in power accountable. Again, I will not stop now. I will not stop ever. Last night, the DOJ sent a team of federal agents to arrest me in the middle of the night for something that I've been doing for the last 30 years, and that is covering the news. The First Amendment of the Constitution protects that work for me and for countless of other journalists who do what I do. I stand with all of them, and I will not be silenced. I look forward to my day in court. Thank you all.
I mean, imagine having so little to do in your life that you stand up there and cheer for Don Lemon, who had the lowest rated show when they moved him to the mornings on CNN. Ashley Brasfield, reporter at the Daily Call, and Brianna Lyman, elections correspondent at the Federalist. Ashley, I can't even take these people seriously.
He's been doing this his whole life, Carl. He's
Failing?
been storming churches.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I mean it's insane. I mean, Don Lemon. We have a correspondent out there right now, and even Mayor Karen Bass showed up in the courtroom. We saw reporting from Haley Gomez that was in the courtroom when Don Lemon was facing the judge, and it's been insane. I mean, the fact that an arrest happened here was so necessary, and I think people are feeling a little bit better about something finally happening on this situation.
Yeah, Brianna, I heard reports that we were expecting P. Diddy, but he couldn't make it.
Yeah, I also think to Ashley's point, he's been doing this for 30 years, which right there is an admission that he knows this isn't political. Because if it was political, not only would he have been arrested during Trump's first term, he would have been arrested at any point during his 30-year career for being just such a bad journalist. But he wasn't, because this isn't about journalism. It's not about your right to, free and fair press. This is the fact that he showed up and terrorized Christian children. According to the unsealed indictment, he, quote, thanked the ringleader of this mob storm for, quote, what she was doing and assured her that he would keep the protest plan secret. That doesn't really sound like a journalist to me. That would be like me going along with someone who's robbing my neighbor's house and being like, I'm just reporting on it. I knew the robbery was going to happen. No, you can't do those things. So I'm happy to see charges brought. And look, if he's innocent, then that's what his jury of his peers will find him.
Yeah, but the grand jury in Minnesota of Minnesotans found him eligible for this arrest warrant. But these all stem from these ICE protests. And speaking of ICE, there's this website, Ashley, called Stop ICE, where the people upload license plates and pictures of potential ICE agents in their cities to help illegals escape and fuel these riots. Last night, though, it got hacked by the good guys. And this message popped up saying, quote, the names, logins, passwords, and locations of the website's users have been turned over to multiple government agencies. Now, of course, the website's back up today, but law enforcement's got their names and IDs.
Yeah, I mean, they have to do something about this. I mean, they're doing this even to journalists. We had a correspondent on the ground, and they're getting on Antifa pages showing that these are the journalists to watch out for. I have a friend, multiple friends that have on those lists that are valuable journalists and not activists like people like Don Lemon just going out and reporting the news. But these are also federal agents, ICE agents that are being doxxed, and people like this need to be stopped. I mean, it's pretty plain and simple. I mean, at least the website was taken down for a little while, but hopefully maybe it can happen again.
Yeah, we'll see. Also, Brianna, in the light of this stuff, obviously the vitriol from the left, consequences for their own actions. This Florida nurse who wished an extreme birth injury on Caroline Levitt, she's been fired and she's had her license removed permanently. The second Florida nurse who said he'd refuse anesthesia to MAGA patients lost his RN status. And the Virginia nurse who encouraged poisoning ICE agents terminated. Big week for FAFO.
Yeah, Carl, I think of that old story when Ronald Reagan was nearly assassinated, and he said to the doctor, my God, I hope you're a Republican. And the doctor said, sir, we're all Republicans today. There was a time in American political life and civil life where politics did not matter, and especially it didn't matter in the medical field. And we've reached a point where things are so toxic and hostile because of the anger and violence that Democrats have fomented, that you have people who are supposed to be able to trust their lives actually hoping and praying that people's lives are put at risk. So I think this just speaks to the kind of situation we're in right now as a country.
I'm just looking interesting. Brianna, you quoted that. Were you alive when that happened?
Maybe not.
Okay. I was going to say, did you find the fountain of youth, or were you not alive during that? Okay.
Don Lemon in his 30 years reported that.
This is what Republicans do. They learn history, which is a fascinating thing. Ashley, this story is crazy out of Florida. A couple suing a fertility clinic after an alleged embryo mix-up resulted in the birth of a non-Caucasian baby that has no biological signatures to either parent. Now, apparently, it was fertilized outside of the womb and then put into the womb once fertilized, but it was not from either the mother or the father. And now both parents are like, whoa, and they're suing this guy. What if this happened? Like, how many times has this happened and people don't know about it because it might have been the same race as the parents?
Well, this is a big issue sometimes with IVF. And yes, we have a declining birth rate in Western civilizations. We see a lot of this happening in South Korea, and it's really not repopulating in some ways. That's a big concern here. But I mean, I can't imagine this happening to me. I mean, the lawsuits that have to ensue after this is insane. And also, I mean, this is a topic within the administration currently, pushing IVF for families to be able to have children. But this is some of the results that possibly could happen. And you have to take a hard look at it. And I know some Republicans, specifically that are Catholics, are split on this issue. So I do think it's something you got to take a hard look at sometimes.
Brianna, where's their baby?
Right. And I think that's what's probably most sad about this, because this child right now, either way, seems like they'll end up with loving parents. These parents say they'd be happy to keep the child, but maybe their biological parents want them. But where is their child? And I think it, again, speaks to the big issue. I don't know their background. I don't know why they chose IVF, but there are a lot of dangers and problems that come along with IVF, and we have to be open and honest about them, including possibly getting someone else's child.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the actual biological parents find this child and they're like, whoa, okay. I mean, I don't know what the solution is here. It's rough. Mother carries full term. It's just a bad situation. Ashley, Brianna, we appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Carl.
All right, coming up, the Small Business Administration has banned over 1,000 companies from federal minority contracting programs. We're going to unpack what these companies have been doing and why the Trump administration needs to continue to crack down on them, because it's everywhere. In a second.
Are you ready to make your dream kitchen a reality? With high-quality cabinets, accents, and accessories designed for all styles and all budgets, Cabinets to Go is the place to go. Get the craftsmanship, styles, and features you want at a price you can't find anywhere else. And right now, you can get it all at 0% for 48 months. We'll even help you imagine it before installation with a free 3D design. Visit us at any one of our beautiful showrooms nationwide to get started today. Cabinets to Go, designed to wow.
Set sail toward fast asthma relief with Brethora.
$300 for a refill?
Don't pay that. Use Single Care. Look up your prescription, show the coupon to the pharmacist, and save.
See what more people are saving with Single Care.
My husband is Miguel Cervantes, who was a firefighter with the Rancho Cucamonga Fire District. That's what he absolutely loved. My husband's cancer is directly related to his service as a firefighter. My immediate thought after he was gone was, how am I going to do this? Tunnel to Towers said that it would be their honor to help me out by covering my mortgage. To say that it's been a weight lifted off my shoulder would be an understatement.
Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
A new year brings new threats, and Cyberman's ready for every one of them. While hackers plot their next move, Cyberman's already there, protecting families, businesses, and governments before danger can strike. This year, protect what matters most with easy-to-use, award-winning protection. With PCmatic, you get American-made protection that's faster, smarter, and stronger. Start 2026 with confidence. Visit PCmatic.com today.
In theaters now.
Everyone wants to know, so here it is.
20 days in her life.
I will move forward with purpose and, of course, with style.
Melania, rated PG, now playing exclusively in theaters.
This is the story of the one who doesn't just see a broken dock. He sees lost revenue, a late night, and work stalled to a halt. Thankfully, he has the experience to handle whatever comes his way and has Grainger on his side, offering access to technical product specialists and the scale to deliver fast, so he can keep his business in gear and always moving forward. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's so much waste. Over 1,000 companies have been banned from the federal minority contracting program, where they just declined to provide the records when requested that would show whether or not they were actually doing the work that they said they were doing, that they were contracted and paid for, or simply taking a cut while passing it on to a larger company and, subcontracting it. Now, the program, known as 8A Business Development Program, it lets women and minority-owned businesses get federal contracts with literally no bid, no competition whatsoever. Our next guest testified to the Senate last month about just how common fraud is in these programs. Government efficiency reporter for the Daily Wire, Luke Rosiak. Luke, I listened to you this morning, and I was like, look, I was in the military for 10 years. I know how much money they light on fire, but this is like next level.
Yeah, it's really been the open secret in D.C. for 50 years that when they say 5% of all contracts have to go to minority-owned businesses, and Biden actually increased that to 15%, that most of the time those minority firms aren't really doing the work. And it's women, too. So if you have to pave a road for the Department of Transportation, there aren't a lot of women-owned asphalt companies.
Shocker.
It's just a dude that puts the asphalt company in his wife's name, and then he doesn't have to bid. He doesn't have to show why he's the best for the job. He doesn't have to provide the best price. And so for years, everybody has turned, just kind of looked the other way. But we're finally seeing movement on this. The courts have said it's illegal to discriminate against white people, essentially. More and more fraud keeps coming out, and it looks like times are finally changing, maybe, for this 8A program.
But this is like not an insignificant amount. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars over years. And you gave a perfect example. I was listening to this morning at the gym, and I was like, there's no way this is real. The Pentagon gave a homeless lesbian a minority contracting firm account for $19 million, okay? The company claims that they were making clothes, but they've never touched or produced a single stitch of clothing everly. And you said in your report that she had to call somebody and ask them, how do I contract to make clothes.
That's what the government does. They give contracts to random people because of the color of their skin. And there's so many layers of absurdity in this story. One of them is the reason this woman, she got it because she's a woman, but also because she's Hispanic, because she had one grandparent from Spain. Spain is a European country, and this woman, it's this kind of really arbitrary who they decide is a victim. But she got these contracts. She has no ability to actually produce the clothes, so she finds a random person to do the work. And so the government really has no idea who's providing the goods or the services that we're getting because of this minority contracting scheme. So this woman's, literally homeless. And
not anymore. She's got a sweet pad now.
And so I actually asked her for comment, and she sent me 10 emails in the middle of the night saying, here's one of them, I'm going to read it. In a stupid male-dominated world, especially this world, being a woman alone is a disadvantage. She said, as she railed against, quote, evil feudal lords, evil Jews, slavery is still here. I'm starting a coalition for women to run the planet. Peace and love, like the orca whales. Male energy is heavy and warlike and long overdue for a reduction. Well, spoiler alert, you got $19 million from the Department of War. We kind of want the warlike energy.
What the hell did the Department of War contract this woman for? Like, I wouldn't contract her to clean the bathrooms, but she got $19 million. What a fool I am. Here I am working 12 hours a day, and this woman gets 19 sticks for nothing. All right. The Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler, she had this to say about the program. She said the 8A program, which is government-wide, not just in the DOW, was abused during the Biden administration to benefit favored minority groups at the expense of every other legitimate small business owner in America, including white Americans. Yes, look, from the party that can't even define what a woman is, they're out there giving this to women-owned businesses and minorities. I mean, that kind of is racism.
Yeah, and I mean, Pete Hegseth said that literally every single day there's a $100 million contract awarded with no bidding because of this identity preference. A lot of it goes to these fake Alaskan firms that pretend they're a bunch of Eskimos, making nuclear missiles or whatever. And then you drive by the building, it's just a headquarters like here outside the DC suburbs, a bunch of rich white guys, but they don't have to bid, and so they can charge the military 10 times as much money. James O'Keefe also had a video where the Native Americans are getting in on it, but then nobody who works there is Native American, and they admit they're just having the big companies like Deloitte and Accenture actually do the work. So it's not even helping small businesses. It's not even helping minorities, except for a lucky handful that basically siphon off millions of dollars for doing no work.
This is a welcome to the Elizabeth Warren Casino as well. 1 and 1,024th in that Native American. It's unbelievable to me. And I was in the military and I lived this. It's still unbelievable to me. So, Luke, we appreciate it, my man.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, Trump picking a new Fed chair to replace too late Jerome Powell, but some GOP members not on board. We got those details next.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
My cell phone bill kept going up. I started looking around. What are our other options? With Consumer Cellular, I'm saving over $50 a month. Same coverage, same data, same talk, same cell phone, simple.
So why am I paying way more for a big wireless plan? What am I getting for my money?
Consumer Cellular gives you the same fast, reliable nationwide network for up to half the cost of big wireless.
Same tower, same coverage.
I feel like people should know that.
They cut my bill just about in half.
I'm saving almost $100 a month.
That's over $1,000 a year.
Not only did I save money, but our coverage was vastly improved. It was fantastic.
There's got to be a catch, and I'm going to find it by going straight to the CEO himself, Ed Evans. What's up, Ed?
Because we serve primarily the 50-plus market today, we know our customers are going to use a lot less data. We can then set our pricing substantially lower than what the big three are able to do on the exact same networks.
Oh, I love that.
My job is to help you save money on wireless, even if you're on an unlimited plan.
My bill with the big carriers was over $300, and with consumer cellular, it's about $100.
Our customers ranked us #1 in network coverage satisfaction. And there's no long-term contracts.
When I look at what I had with Verizon, I'm not sure what I was paying extra for.
And yes, you could keep your number, no problem. Want to bring your phone? That's great too. We'll have you wrapped up in about 20 minutes. Really.
We hadn't gone back. We're not going back. We're with Consumer Cellular.
Call now and see how one of our U.S.-based Switch Pros can cut your bill by up to half. That's right, up to half. And when you call right now, you'll get your second month free. Just use the code SECONDFREE. And AARP members save even more. Call 1-800-918-0560. That's 1-800-918-0560.
Obviously, we have been following the developments from Don Lemon's arrest and the charges throughout the show. As you saw, Lemon addressed the media and was released on personal recognizance bond and will face no pretrial supervision, the judge requiring Lemon to get permission for any foreign travel and is allowing him to go on a trip to France in June. Of course he's going to France. Another reason for us to not follow in the ways of Europe, though, speaking of France, a convicted terrorist is running for city council in Birmingham, UK. Now, his name is Shahid Butt. That's actually his name. But he was convicted by a Yemeni. If you're convicted of terrorism in Yemen, you got problems, bro. 1999, sentenced to 5 years in prison in Yemen after being found guilty of forming an armed gang and conspiring to bomb the British consulate and a church and a Swiss-owned hotel in Yemen. And then he moved to the UK. They let him into the UK. One more reason to stay away from this entire continent. According to a new report, London had 9,744 rapes in 2025. That's a rape every 54 minutes. All I can think about is this guy.
Had your kids, had your wife, and had your husband because they raping everybody out here.
That never gets old. What he said. Jeffrey Lord, contributing editor for the American Spectator, and Matthew Foldi, editor-in-chief at the Washington Reporter, who was just in the UK. Foldi, you didn't get raped, but you were in the UK.
I did not get raped, and actually I think playing that video of the Hide Your Kids, Hide Your Wife would probably now be illegal in the UK. And the thing about Shahid Butt is that obviously he has a great name. Honestly, I kind of hope that he wins because he will be one of the least radical people in the British Parliament if all he's done was conspire to bomb a British consulate. I mean, Carl, you're totally right. What it would take to be convicted of any crime in the lawless hellhole that is Yemen means that you are a really, really bad guy. And think about what it says about England and the United Kingdom, that he is probably less radical than you have people like Jeremy Corbyn in the British Parliament. Yeah. That Shahid Butt is probably the vote if you're a moderate person in that part of England.
Yeah, and of course we're not laughing about sexual assault. We're laughing about the fact that England apparently doesn't want to do anything about it, which is just insane.
Right, they criminalize self-defense in England. It's awful.
They have. Jeff, President Trump, though, announcing today that Kevin Warsh is going to be his pick for the next Federal Reserve chair. But Senator Tom Tillis says that he's going to oppose the confirmation of any Federal Reserve nominee, including for the position of chairman, until the DOJ inquiry into Chairman Powell is fully transparent and resolved. They spent $4 million renovating a building that should have cost maybe $100 million.
Well, the thing is, Powell is not the new chairman designate. One should have nothing to do with the other if that one guy is, getting the heave-ho, essentially. The problem we have here is that the Federal Reserve is not a cabinet position. It's an independent entity. And presidents throughout the history of the Federal Reserve, which I think came about in the Wilson administration, have seemingly always had problems with them. I remember when President Reagan was there, he had problems. other presidents have had problems. And the fact that this guy is not only an economist, but has had some viewpoints disagreeing with President Trump, and is a young guy, relatively speaking, yeah, that's a recipe for some trouble down the road.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to me. I mean, the fact that inflation is at like 1.2% right now means they should definitely lower interest rates. But Matt, speaking of Tillis, take a listen to what he had to say about whether or not Trump should fire Stephen Miller.
If we let these rookies, these amateurs, continue to advise president on these failed policies, like where we're having to backtrack on Greenland, what we're having to do to de-escalate in Minnesota, and a long list, that is going to be a horrible outcome for Republicans in November. And that's what I'm concerned with.
I would say it's not people like Stephen Miller have to go. It's people like that, like rhinos, that don't want to execute the policies that they stood on stage with Trump and cheered for. Those guys are the ones who's got to go, Matt.
The Greenland deal that Trump got is also a historic win for America. So I don't even know what that makes sense. Anyways, I don't remember if it was Tom Tillis or it was some other senator who's frustrated with Stephen Miller was comparing Stephen Miller to Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings. So, you know, I'm a nerd. I don't remember the books that well. But that's not necessarily bad because Wormtongue has an amazing redemption arc when he stabs Saruman. And then the implication also is that Trump would be King Theoden. Yes, Theoden dies, but he goes down and saves people with a great speech, and he charges with the Rohirrim to save the day at Helm's Deep. So I don't know. If you're going to like attack people with Lord of the Rings references, I don't know if you need to read the books, but you should at least watch the movies, probably the extended editions, if you want to really know what you're talking about there.
I'll be honest, I have no idea what you just said. But I mean,
I feel like you have probably never seen Lord of the Rings movies, Carl, but have you read the books? No.
No.
Okay.
When I wrote
all right, never mind.
I
should have known better.
Books,
I should have known better.
I could read. Jeff, I got to get to this. Trump keeps on winning, obviously, but his two sons and the Trump org just sued the IRS with their dad, obviously. The Treasury, they're going to sue him for $10 billion over leaking their personal information.
Yeah, you know, this is a problem that all presidents have, that there's some bureaucrat somewhere down in the bowels of the Treasury Department or the IRS that wants to embarrass the president, whomever that may be, because they don't like the guy. I'm not, you know, surprised at this, but of course it is wrong. The question is, will they find out exactly who did this, and will that person be punished? Call me skeptical.
Yeah, but Matt,
we saw, by the way, there was that IRS contractor, Charles Littlejohn, I think was his name, who leaked all of the sensitive data of mostly Republicans. Yeah. I think $10 billion is probably too little.
Matt, I got 30 seconds for you on this one. The UN, apparently, thanks to Trump, they're going bankrupt. And I was like, Christmas came early.
Well, Hanukkah came early as well. I think that the UN is kind of like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. It's an irredeemably haunted building. So much evil has been done there that, you know, Chris Plant on Newsmax, he likes talking about how it should be turned into condos. I think it should be completely demolished brick by brick, and then you could probably put another Trump Tower there.
Yeah, no, I'd volunteer to head that demolition squad myself. Matt?
Yeah, me too. I'd do it with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. All right, before we go, on a day the left cries free speech, they go and do this just unbelievably crazy thing. Next.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax.
My back got injured very bad. I was off work for about a year. I heard about Relief Factor from my wife. I took it every day, 3 times a day for 3 weeks. I'd look at her and I said, the pain is gone. And she said, I'm glad it helped. I said, no, you don't understand. It's gone.
Relief Factor is a daily supplement that doesn't just mask pain, it helps eliminate it. Call or go online now for our 3-week quick start, just $19.95.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
People always ask, why Patriot Gold Group? With over 10,000 clients to date, and over 1 billion in transactions. Not a single complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Consumer Affairs top rated for 9 years in a row. Over 2,000 5-star reviews. The only company nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the no fee for life IRA. Gold is up 80% in the last 28 months, 275% since Lehman Brothers collapsed. We are patriots protecting patriots. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Call now, 888-528-4290.
Hi, I'm Ben Cozy. Isn't traveling a pain in the neck? You're cramped, uncomfortable, and forget about getting any rest. There's nothing cozy about airplane seats or hard plastic benches, and those so-called travel pillows, they just don't cut it. You don't need another travel pillow. You need Be Cozy, the world's most comfortable neck pillow. Trapped in the middle seat? Wrap Be Cozy around your neck to stop chin drop, bobblehead napping. Smashed up against the window? Fold Be Cozy over and tuck it onto your shoulder for super side support. Frequent flyer miles got you sitting aisle? Turn Be Cozy to the side for the perfect pillow position. Everyone wants to be cozy, so get the world's most comfortable travel neck pillow and be cozy just like me, Ben Cozy. You get to be cozy. Everyone gets a Be Cozy. Only Be Cozy has patented overlapping arms so you get double support and the comfort you need in any seat on any trip. Go online right now and get this exclusive TV offer. Buy one Be Cozy, get one 50% off. Get yours now.
Anybody who's struggling with alcohol should try Or Health. Within a week, the cravings were completely gone. Or Health is safe, science-backed, and it works. I couldn't believe how easy it was. Alcohol doesn't run my life anymore.
Text Newsmax to 710-710 to learn more.
Precise designs, subtle curves, curated upgrades, elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rove Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at rove.co/sparks.
This is just hilarious. On the day that the entire left is crying over Don Lemon's arrest, the First Amendment, the so-called death of free speech, they go and do this. Just breaking, Manhattan Borough President Brad Hollyman's signal, he hyphenated his name, is urging New York socialist mayor to remove yours truly, and Rob coming up, Newsmax from New York City cabs, okay? Apparently, they said that we are not a credible source. So here's my challenge to the socialist government of Manhattan now. Prove something wrong. What did I lie about here? Find the one thing that I've ever said that has turned out to be incorrect or factually inaccurate. You can come on here, we can debate. Rob, they are so desperate to wipe us off.
And the funny thing is, I mean, if you see us if you're ever here in the taxi cabs, it's just straight news. There's no opinion, there's no perspective analysis, anything like that. We just feed people the exact kind of just, here's what's happening today from Newsmax. It's a deal with the taxi cabs. It's very just basic, I guess. And they're very offended by that.
But they've had all kinds of like wackadoo stuff in taxi cabs before. No one's ever raised a problem until.
Well, it used to be NBC. I used to work for NBC in New York, and I'd be on the cabs for NBC in New York, and they were fine with that. NBC's got a lot of problems.
The Ugandan socialist doesn't like it.
That's not a big surprise. I was amazed we cut the deal to begin with. Carl, good to see you.
Later,
Have a good weekend.